right, we have everybody.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rock and Shock 2019 Indie Comic Variety Hour. And that is being held for, I have representatives here from Saturday Night Comics and Rough House Publishing.
We forgot Source Point Press, but Josh
Service Point Press.
Source Point was the last week edition.
I'm your host, Dan Burke, and here's the rest of the panel. I will let them introduce themselves from here on down.
Hi guys, I'm Billy Nichols. I'm the lead writer of Saturday Night Comics.
My name is Mike Doherty. I write and draw from Saturday Night Comics.
I'm Alex Hoey. I did part of the anthology for Doherty, and I'm a freelance cartoonist.
I'm Steve Van Samson. I write for Rough House Publishing, and I also have a few novels out.
Derek Rook, artist publisher, Rough House Publishing.
And I'm Josh Werner, and the founder and art director of Source Point Press publishing company.
Thank you guys for joining us this morning. I understand it's early, and I understand it's also been a tremendously long weekend, considering this has been going on since Friday nights. So, the big first question, how is the start of what started this creative process to get where you guys are at now, as far as publishing books, a series of them, or currently projects that you're working on now?
Well, my whole thing started with a terrible prom night and a bad dream. I'm writing a book that is sequential. So it's 3 issues and goes to a new story. I decided that when I started this project with Mike that I wanted to do something that was very organic to me, something that meant something to me. And it turns out that your junior prom going horribly wrong can be a great horror story.
I've been telling stories my whole life. My full-time is as an art teacher, and I'm on stage all the time, and I'm always telling stories to my students, and that's how I teach. So it's very natural for me to take that skill set and move it into graphic novels and stories that way. So I've been doing it for longer than I can remember.
I think a lot of it is just doing it, because that's the hardest part. It sounds dumb, but it's just dedicating and tirelessly putting enough time into something. Even if it's not a big deal, it's something that means more to you than anything else. So you'll put as much as you can into something, and I know all these guys up here especially know that some things might not be the quality and best it always is, but at the end of the day, finish not perfect, but you gotta just keep pushing forward with what you want to do with both art, writing, publishing, all that kind of stuff. But it takes a lot of motivation, and it takes a lot of enthusiasm. And the hardest thing, especially in any type of comics, whether it be artwork or anything else, is trying to pull motivation out of nowhere. And I think that's very difficult. And I appreciate all these guys out there for doing that, because keep going every single time is very difficult. And I commend all you guys up here for that.
Wow, Alex, that was like really well said. Man.
You've seen me at funerals.
Yeah.
Starts a round of applause.
Full motivation out of nowhere. I couldn't say it better than that. I mean, that's the thing. Like, if you have this great idea and you feel like it's good enough that you want to put a whole portion of your life devote it into making it into something physical that other people can perhaps hopefully enjoy. It really is about pulling the motivation out of nowhere and being disciplined, just like, anything. If you're gonna, go to the gym and that's your goal. If you have this goal, whatever it is, like, it really is so incredibly hard to stay on task. And, there isn't a lot of time. Nobody has a lot of free time. Like anybody, everybody always says, like, how do you finish a book? How do you do this? I don't have time. It's like, I don't have time either, man. Like, it's just a matter of, you gotta just figure it out however you can. Like I said, just like going to the gym, whatever. It feels like there's no time, but there is. You just kind of gotta parse it out and pull that motivation out and keep with it. And if it's something that, I know a lot of people who they've been working on something for a really long time. Hey, I've been working on this book, 10 years, whatever. It's like, it is just about finishing it. Just put that out, because when people feel too precious about their first thing, it's like it's this perfect, beautiful golden calf. Like it has to be perfect. It's never going to be. It's not going to be perfect. It just has to be finished, and then you make the next one better. So I think that's what I'm trying to do.
And I don't say they like your old work better, you sold out, your new stuff sucks.
You know, I've never heard that.
Just
Just you wait, kid.
It's funny you say that too. I'm just going to add to this really quick. I apologize, but my biggest fear is that this is going to be my first published work. Is I'm so afraid that it's going to suck. But you know, you got to just get it out there and let it suck with the universe.
Yeah, you make the next one better.
Exactly. And you move on.
That's what you do.
Well, talking about suck. I had a art teacher. I went to 2 different colleges after.
Was it Mike?
Art. And the art teacher that I went to in Worcester, Massachusetts, at the time it was Worcester Technical Institute. He was an old bullpen art director for the Worcester TNG. And this guy had no gumption about saving your feelings. If you were in his class, we worked from 8 o'clock in the morning to 3 o'clock in the afternoon every day. We had 1 lunch break and that was it, and then we were doing work. If you brought it up to him and it wasn't good, he would tell you, this sucks. And people walked away crying. Some people actually walked away crying. And this was a good way for people it was a good way to find the cream rising to the surface. Because the truth of the matter is, a lot of people want to be in this business until they're in this business. And then artists are very sensitive people. You know, they don't like to hear that their work stinks.
Writers too. We're all very sensitive.
Anybody in the entertainment business, for certain actors as well, musicians. But that's the only way you get better. You know, if you're an artist, as an example, and people are telling you that you're great all the time, that's great. But that's not motivating you to be better, to do more. I personally am extremely self-motivated, and I don't like anybody telling me what to do. So those 2 things have motivated me to start Rough House Publishing, because in an artist-driven medium that comic books are, artists are always getting short shrift, always. I mean, it happens so many times. I believe everybody on this panel and forward can attest to that. So, and I did work for other people at one point in time, and I wanted to be the master of my own destiny. I wanted to start the link in my own chain, and I wanted to start a safe house where other artists who work with us or with me are treated fairly. You know, it doesn't mean that you have to compensate them better than anybody else. It just means that you have to do what you say and say what you mean. And that's what we've successfully done up to this point and continue to do.
Well said. Well said. So when I graduated from art school, I had my immediate goal was I was trying to be realistic, and even this wasn't very realistic. My immediate goal was I want to work full-time in anything creative, and then slowly just morph that into what I wanted to do with my illustration degree. And I pulled it off within 6 months of graduating. I was working full-time in the arts, and I have ever since, which I'm very, very, very lucky to, and also stupid to have been able to do, because I was very poor. There's a lot of suffering that goes along that road. But somewhere along the way, while freelancing for a bunch of different places and doing all sorts of weird art jobs that I didn't want to do, I ended up in comics in 2012 and decided to take the endeavor of starting a publishing company. But by the end of 2013, we had 12 releases, and it was an addiction after that. I would put myself through anything to keep it going, and I did it. I mean, slept in the car, like all sorts of crazy stuff. And now, as of like right this moment, we're in 4 different states at the same exact time, 4 different conventions. We have Billy Bob Thornton at our booth in Los Angeles right now doing a signing. We have a movie that was in theaters this year, an animated series in development right now, and another movie in pre-production right now. Which I know movies don't have to be the end goal, but it just shows like how far removed I was from that to here. It's insane, and it makes me feel sick all the time. So I'm still like one failure away from being homeless at any given moment. But now it's really turned into something, and every once in a while I have to remind myself to be really proud of that. Like, I stuck it through, and I wasn't wrong. It just took a while, like 7 years of really hard stuff to kind of get going. And even now, it's very modest, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, wow, you guys must be doing great." It's like we're lucky to break even. We just want to be able to keep doing it, and that's the big goal, is really keep doing it. And like when people love it, that's when it'll turn into something big enough.
Very good, gentlemen. It was interesting. I kind of got hooked on something that Billy had said earlier, saying that everybody in this business sometimes is sensitive, and also they have egos coming in, and they don't want their ego to kind of take a step back. My question to you guys is that a lot of you do. This is a lot of collaborative effort. It's not one person doing one thing. So if there's somebody out there right now that maybe they're a good drawer and illustrator, but they're not a great writer, can you give someone out there that feels maybe that they're stuck, like that they have good drawings, but at the same time they don't have somebody that they have sketches and drawings that are done, but they don't have a place for them to be, or at the same time the words kind of a title even for any of the characters that they're working on. The process that you guys have, did you guys come in sometimes with a sketchbook and sometimes a notebook, and did you guys just sit there and say, these are my ideas, or did you have something that maybe you were sitting on for a very long time, that all of a sudden you started talking to this person, not even knowing that they were in comics or anything like that, and all of a sudden you just sat there and it was just like a free flow session?
All right, story time, I guess. So when I met Mike, I fortunately met Mike thanks to my wife. So I set Rebecca up because I had to work on a free comic book day, and I asked her to run over to Rubber Chicken Comics, cheap plug, to pick up my books and to pick up my free comic books. And these two met by fate. And I think it was, what, a year later? About a year later, I called Mike and I'm like, I have this idea. Maybe you want in on it, maybe you don't. And I give Mike a lot of credit because Mike has listened to every idea I've had, every stupid idea, every good idea. He'll put me in my place when need be. And as a partner, I've been fortunate enough to find somebody who can actually, work off my energy and find where the bonuses and the ideas that I come up with. We're writing a story called The Mansion, and it's a revolving thing. It's a thriller. It's kind of like Tales from Suspense for those of you who read old Golden Age and some Bridge comics. It's 3 issues, and then it moves on to another story. As I said earlier, the first story is a prom night thriller. It's the story of my junior prom night. And I gotta be honest, when I first put it out there, it sucked. It was probably the worst story ever. I literally read 3 issues in one. And when you're lucky enough to find somebody who's been in comics, or you find somebody who understands how publishing is supposed to go, or how your thought process works because they've been around you, he'll even tell you, I have 150 ideas a minute, and maybe 2 of them are good out of that first hour. Not even the first minute. Maybe even teetering on that. Maybe one idea. Jared will tell you too. Dan will tell you. My wife will tell you. All these guys will probably tell you because some of them know me pretty well.
Your quota's about once a week.
All right, there you go. That's a more accurate number. But the point is that put your idea out there in the universe. Talk to people. If you're at a Comic-Con, a lot of artists are approachable. Like, I'm not saying go up to Jack Kirby's granddaughter's uncle's best friend and be like, hey, I want to get into Marvel. But if you start getting a rapport with an artist and you start commissioning that artist or that writer for things and you talk to them more, first of all, show them respect. Don't just walk up to them and be like, hey, can you check this out? I've commissioned Mike 1,000 times. I've commissioned Derek before. There are a bunch of guys that I want to commission that aren't here, that are here, and just give them your time, but also give them your respect, because it's going to flow a lot better if you're like, hey, listen, I've known you for a while. I have this idea in my head. Can you check this out? But again, put it out there. Don't just leave it in your head. Throw it in your Google Drive, show it to some people you know. That was the first thing I did. He was one of the first people I showed The Mansion before I showed him. I forget, I think your exact words were, it's chilling, but it sucks. It's along those lines.
I don't know if I said sucks only because of the fact that I wanted to let you down easy.
The point is again, get it out there. It's the best thing I can tell you.
But get it out there with people you trust. These stories and things that we come up with are almost like our children. They need to be nurtured, and not every kid turns out perfect, but they all have their pluses and minuses. So you need to find collaborators that can help you take this idea, take this kernel, and grow it into a story. Sometimes you have to prune branches off the tree to make things more streamlined, and it never ever hurts to get an extra pair of eyes on whatever you're doing, because what my intent is for the story may be not what's actually on the page when people see. So you have to take that intent and put it out there in the world, and yes, you can have your idea and your intent to it, but what the world sees may be something entirely different. So you have to find collaborators that you trust, and you do that by making relationships and talking with people, and none of this happens in a vacuum. It doesn't happen by itself. It is something that needs to be in the real world at certain points and be looked at by other pairs of eyes to help bring it forward. None of us have gotten where we are alone. There's always somebody in the background, somebody who has helped us, pushed us, inspired us to do better.
I would say write everything down and kill your darlings outright. Just keep whittling something down. If you're writing something and you want to show it off to people, like the same way you do a portfolio, you show the best stuff you have. Don't show up like, oh, that was a bad print that day, oh, it's kind of scratchy. No, get the best you got and show that off. It's the same thing with writing, same thing with pitches. Write everything down, kill the things that don't work out. That's why it's killing your darlings, because it's like, oh, I really wanted that, but it doesn't work. Your writing has to get a bit more uniform as you keep going, because you have to understand how people perceive your story, not how you perceive it. Because, like, say you're writing a mystery story, you know all the twists and turns. You have other people keep eyes on it and see how it works. And when you finally do talk to someone, especially if it's like a first-time meet, like, oh, I love your artwork, I love you do like a book or anything like that, elevator pitches. Work on minute-long pitches. Make it sound the best, just like a portfolio with words. Make it sound as best as you can and as short and sweet as you can, just so it engages a little bit of interest where it's like, oh yeah, you're that guy that gave that pitch. That's very interesting. Because I've had people come to me and tell me very interesting stories, and when it's short and sweet, it's the best, but when people come up, it's like, okay, look, it's a story about this guy. He's going to prom, and I'm thinking about adding a monster, but I'm not sure about it yet, but I was kind of wanting to do one, but like, no, but I want to do one where it actually has a girl in it, but I haven't decided. I kind of want to be gender neutral on it, but I want to figure out like the version about it. Maybe I should make that the monster. Oh, I'm still working it out, but anyway, I love your artwork. Please. Yeah.
We killed that story.
Right there. But work on basically, also, I guess, be friendly and try to be as organic as you can to talk to people, because as intimidating as things are, just like talking to celebrities here and all type of stuff, treat them like people. And if you guys know anything about talking to like any random celebrity, talk about something obscure that they did, because it gives them something new to talk about. Like if you talk to Bruce Campbell or something, bring up something like, hey, I loved you in, that one episode of Briscoe County Jr. or something. Just something a little bit off the beaten path, because it's something new. And say you come up to an artist or something, it's like, I like that old work you did, back when you did, whatever, for an indie comic or something, or I love your webcomic. And the last thing I'll say is, especially, is that sometimes good writing can prevail over bad artwork, and sometimes artwork can make a horror story better at times. There's a balance to it, but sometimes it's like giving someone a joke, and there's many ways you can tell that same joke. You just have to find the right person to deliver it the precise way.
I think that something really important as any creative, as Derek was saying, we're all sensitive. Everybody's very close to their work. This you know, Mike said, they're like our children, right? So we're so close to our work. Nobody knows it. Nobody cares about it more than us. So the most important thing, I think, is to be able to get to that point where when it does come to the point where you're gonna maybe collaborate with somebody else, right? You're gonna meet somebody at a convention, or you're gonna reach out to somebody online, or somebody you're a fan of, or who knows. It's really important to be able to take criticism on that work and to look at it not like your job, but this is an objective thing that you need to, this is still play. It's not the Venus de Milo yet. And maybe it'll never be the Venus de Milo, maybe it'll be an Easter Island yet, but at the end of the day, it's gonna be something, and you need to get it to that point. So, it's important to find somebody that you gel with, somebody who has, mirrors your passion, mirrors your, sensibilities. That's all really important. But if you are, unable to take any criticism with this thing that you've been so close to and nobody else has been this close to ever, then you're gonna end up like a David Lee Roth, or somebody who's like seen as a prima donna that, has to, have it their way or the highway all the time, and nobody's gonna wanna work with you, right? So like, that's a really, I think, really important stage, you gotta be able to see if you can get to it. Yes, it's your thing, but you don't always know best, even if it's your own thing. It's a really important thing to be able to hear what other people have to say. As you guys have all touched upon, other people are not necessarily going to see it the way you do. I've written stuff where I've felt like I was being really obvious with a plot point, right? I'm like, this becomes this. And other people are like, yeah, so I don't understand what the deal is with this thing over here. I'm like, oh, well, I thought I connected it pretty well. And they're like, oh, yeah, no, I totally missed that. And it turned out, even though it was like completely clear in my head, I had like put this one throwaway sentence that actually connected it. And it's like, okay, well, somebody just forgot that one sentence. So that was not enough. So I did not do a good job of that. So, getting that criticism, hearing it back, you digest it, and you're like, okay, instead of being like, nope, I did it, it's done, it's perfect, I'm the man, I'm the one who knows. You are receptive, and you actually are able to make it better. So finding somebody who can, tell you these things, or various people or whatever, is all fine and good, and that's really important, but you also have to work on yourself and get yourself there. So.
Yeah, I just add one more thing to that.
No, you've talked enough.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to add, is anyone in here any writers or any other comic creators that are like working on something or are inspired by? Do you guys have any issues with taking criticism? It's very difficult to take criticism, but when you take it to heart, it's usually because you want to improve, you want to be better. That's just regardless of how people are. And when you're an artist, you take it even harder because this is something so personal to you. But at the end of the day, it's something that's going to make you better. And as hard as that is, that's why everything hurts. Like when your boss is crappy to you or something, you just want to improve. And the unfortunate thing is that as much work as you do and the best, stories you ever do, that you're never going to be the one that chooses what your magnum opus is at the end of the day.
That's so true.
Yeah.
I think it kind of boils down to just a couple keywords and phrases. When you get into this business, or even if you're just starting out and you want to do something with your work other than just do it for yourself, you have to have vision. You have to have a way to see beyond 50 feet in front of you. You have to have a trajectory. So that way, you have steps that you can take to get to whatever your goal is. You have to be, and I'm gonna, again, thick skin, you have to be good, okay? If you don't think that you're any good, or if you don't think you're good enough yet, then you're not, period, okay? Work on your craft, get it to the point where you feel it's as far as you can take it by yourself. That's when you're gonna start presenting. That's when you're gonna start going up to people and asking them to do portfolio reviews and check out your work and see what kind of, not criticism, but advice they can give you on the products that you do to make you better. I used to go to conventions before I broke into the business, and I would literally study for going there like it was a test. And when I got there, all of my pages were the best that I thought that I could ever do. It was representative of all of the different things that I can do, whether it be coloring, lettering, writing, artwork, whatever, inking, penciling, what have you. And shut up. And what I mean by that is, when you're sitting down with somebody like George Perez, or you're sitting down with somebody like Todd McFarlane, whoever you're lucky enough to have sit down with you and talk to you about your work, whatever they have to say, you listen. You don't talk. You don't try to defend your work. Oh, like I think Alex or somebody else was saying, oh yeah, I only did that because of this or whatever. They're not there to debate with you. They're there to help you. Whatever they have to say thank you for your time. I appreciate it very much. Take it with you and go forward from there. Again, thick skin. You have to have thick skin in this business. Not only for yourself and all those inner demons that say, oh, this isn't good or whatever. The word suck has been used by me and everybody else here quite often in this panel so far. Art is subjective. Art is not my art, your art. These guys are not going to be the same to all of you out there. One of you guys is going to think that I'm a good artist. This guy over here is going to think that I'm not. And that's okay. All right? It doesn't matter. None of that matters. You should do what you're passionate about and let the audience find you. You have to be audacious in this business. You have to be dangerous. You have to go forward. You have to pump out your chest, and you have to be ready to make a mark. Otherwise, you're just going to end up in a sea of hopefuls that are willing to do it on the weekends, kind of non-committal, so to speak. This is an all-or-nothing business, so you have to. He mentioned that he slept in his car. I almost had a heart attack. Things happen, and you have to be able to commit yourself to all of those things. And that applies to any kind of art that you do, whether you're a musician, actor, artist, whatever it is. You have to be willing to go all the way. And if you're not, maybe this isn't for you, and that's okay too. It's a good way to find out.
Well said. On the point of collaboration, there's a lot of collaborating. So as both a writer and an artist, I've worked with artists who were doing something that I've written and vice versa. And I think it's almost harder for the former to see, when you're an artist, to see another artist's interpretation of your writing, because when you write, you already have it in your head what you're picturing. This is how I would do it. So you have to kind of swallow that down and find the reasons why they took the approach they did. And a lot of writers who aren't artists already act that way too. This isn't what I was picturing in my head. And as an artist, you'll try to work with them and say, "What were you picturing?" And they can't really describe it because they're not an artist. So this is like a round and round thing that happens over time. But the goal is to find collaborators who you respect so much and you love their work and who feel the exact same way about you. And when that happens, I know it sounds so simple, but there's tons of collaborations where you can look at them and think about them and say, that's not really the case. That person was available. That person's efficient. This person can get it done. That's not enough. You have to find collaborators that truly admire each other's work and respect it. Collaborators who think that the other person is better than them, and it makes them want to be as good as them to rise to that occasion. So a writer who hooks up with an artist is going to go back, redo these scripts, and try to make it as best as they can be because they were lucky enough to nab this artist that they really love. And this artist is so excited to be working with this writer, they want to do the best work they can to tell that writer's story. When that happens, it's magic every time. And on the point of bettering yourself and listening to your audience, almost all of it's been said, but it's so accurate and so important. I can't tell you how many times, I'd write something, I'd try to get really heady, I'd try to kind of challenge the reader, make them think a little bit, have some cool big twists, and expect them to work it out. And at the point, because I laid everything out, it's all in there, but it's not a scavenger hunt, right? Like, it's entertainment. If somebody comes up to me at a con and they say, I didn't get this story, I didn't get it, what happened to me, I didn't understand. And then I explain it to them, and they go, wow, that's amazing. I don't go, I did a good job, that person's just not smart enough to really get it the first time around. I say, why what did I do wrong? Why did they have to ask me? If I can't explain to every reader in person what happened, that's a horrible, horrible thing. So when you come across that, you have to start thinking about your audience and thinking, okay, well, about what percentage do I expect actually did get it? If one reader didn't get it, I might need to rethink my approach. Because as a writer, you start thinking that you're spoon feeding, and you're like, I don't want to spoon feed my audience. I don't need to shove it in their face for them to understand what's happening. I want to be subtle sometimes, and you're usually wrong. You're usually not spoon feeding. Like sometimes you do have to kind of like slap it in the face a little bit every single plot point a step of the way, so that they make sure that everybody's on the same page. Because as a reader, as somebody who watches movies, anything like that, if you're kind of dozing off for a second, you might miss something, and now you don't understand what's happening. So you need to be ready for an audience like that. So listen to your readers, even if you don't agree with them. Go back and figure out, well, what could I have done differently? And next time around, boom, you're gonna get it. The other thing too is when you're starting off really early, take your goals down a little bit. I can't tell you any time, like first-time writers that are pitching to SourcePoint they're pitching us like a 16-issue series. I'm gonna say no every single time. If this is your first time writing comics, there's no way. Do a one-shot, do a one-shot and do it well, and save that big, huge goal, that huge epic story you have in your mind for a little bit down the road, so that you can kind of grow and work your way up to it. Because if you start failing at that big goal right out the gate, you're going to be so depressed for the rest of it, you're going to start thinking it's never going to happen. And if you do smaller things along the way, next thing you know, it is happening, and now it's ready, and you can do it. You're better and ready to do it. That's about it in my ways.
I just want to add one tiny thing. The only guy on this panel that hasn't been fully published yet. I'm glad George Perez was mentioned. Thank you, Derek. George Perez is one of the reasons why I got into comic books. And, well, if George Perez gave me 5 minutes of his time and told me my book sucked, then George Perez is not wrong in the story.
I think that is probably leading me to my next question in the sense of you brought up George Perez as an inspiration for you to get into this. Why the aspect of horror genre, in the sense of considering the fact that most of us, if we were in school and we were writing stuff about horror and also drawing pictures of horror, they'd be sending us down to the principal's office and our parents would be getting a phone call home saying there's a problem with Billy. I wasn't throwing you under the bus. It's just Billy isn't just, a regular basis. Yeah. So the question I have is, did you have to deal with that growing up? And was it hard just being able to be that expressive about it, just because of the fact that you might have to deal with repercussions from parents, faculty, and teachers and stuff?
I mean, we're clearly all here because of horror movies, am I wrong? Now, all of us are here because we have some affinity and love for horror. I mean, I was the kid everybody was worried about because I liked horror movies at a young age. But there was repercussions. But at the end of the day, you can only read Spider-Man so many times, and let's face it, both Marvel and DC have completely prostituted the idea of superheroes over the last 20 years. The MCU, the DCEU has ruined comic books because it's allowed for casual fans who don't read comics, who don't care about comics. So why not go to a passionate fan base who actually is going to read what you write and care about what you write, is going to have an investment in what you write and what you draw and what you do, and is going to come back for issue 2. It's going to come back for issue 3. The thing about comic book fans is, and I say this as somebody who spends a ton on comic books alone, after issue 25, most fans won't care. Look at Spawn. Most of us stopped reading Spawn after issue 25. I mean, you're the one that didn't. But the fact of the matter is why go after a fan base who's seen the same song and dance? Peter Parker's uncle died. Let's go see Peter Parker save the world again. Captain America was only special because of what was in the bottle. Let's go read that for the 400th time. I'm sick and tired of reboots. I'm sick and tired of the same. That's why I went to horror.
I ended up here because I just like to tell stories, and horror is almost a universal fan base. It allows, if you watch the news, there's more awful happening in the world, in the real world, than there is in all the horror movies made in a single year. We like to be scared. We like to take that ride on the roller coaster. That adrenaline that you get feels good. that shock, that awe feels good. That's why people like horror movies. That's why I like horror movies. That's why I like to ride the roller coaster. Because you like to be shocked, you like to be scared. It makes you feel alive. It makes you appreciate the life that you have. So that's exactly why I'm here. Those are the stories that I love.
I'd say horror in general is just liberating. It's the spice genre. You build a tolerance the more you take, you know, the more you have. I mean, I also love spicy food, especially I killed my gallbladder. Like, I don't have one. I went to the ER because of that.
It's not funny, guys.
It's not funny.
It's very funny.
The guy slipped my bile duct down to the hospital front. It's a true story. But still, I've lived it enough. But horror is liberating, and I think people always want to escape where it's just like, oh, they went that far? Oh, that's something you can't do. That's something that's just a bit more taboo than going to it. So, that's fine. But no, but when I was in school, I didn't have the greatest high school. I had some pretty bad teachers, but they did weirdly encourage me to continue in art, especially because like my mom was always supportive. I'd support her family, but if you have someone to back you up or just you have the passion for it, you can keep going. But I remember there were a few times that I've been caught drawing, my note to be sent home, like I was just caught drawing in class again. My mom's collected all of them in my baby book growing up because she knew what I was going to do and what I was passionate about. And there was even a point where I drew a big badass dragon killing a village of people all over my desk. And
I mean, it was epic.
it was, I did the entire desk. I shaded stuff. Because it was the same crap. I didn't care what they were doing. I was getting A's anyway. But the thing was is that they called me back into the classroom. They're like, we didn't have assigned seats. And I was like, well, how'd you know it was me? And they're like, because it's really good. I was like, should I take the credit? But I even had a teacher once told me that, like an actual teacher told me that Alex will either be a great artist one day or he'll kill everyone in the school.
Or he'll turn into a dragon or a village of nuns.
Well, I mean, that's what I said under my breath when I walked out of the classroom.
Oh, well, that's why I thought.
But horror is very special, and there's a lot you can do with it. Because, I mean, it's like comedy and tragedy. That's why their horror comedies are the best, because they hit the same beats. You know, because you can look at something and laugh at it, you know, in the same way that's like so over the top that, you know, you're just like, oh, it's a hilarity, it's Lovecraftian, where you're just laughing at it. And it's something else. And I think you don't get that in a lot of other genres, because there's only so far you can go and say like romance or something, or even like, you know, but like, whenever it's mirrored with something else, there's always more intrigue. You know, like I like noir. Noir is cool. Noir horror, noir, or like romance horror. You know what's up with that?
Build something into it. Exactly.
Yeah, emerging genres.
Build a second show. Like The Notebook meets Zombieland. I think that would be great at the box office. I think all the wives would want to go, and all the husbands would be excited to see it.
Exactly. And man, like
Best of both worlds.
I mean, there's a really good Billy Nichols quote about horror and sexuality, and you know how he thought that women were the ones who loved horror the most because it gave them that thrill. I don't have the full quote in my head, but
You gotta say it.
I mean, there's a lot of evidence in the con right now.
there's probably shirts with it.
It's just been goth girls for days at my booth. And dad bods.
Well, I mean, you're a if the question is why horror, I mean, I don't know why does anybody like anything? You know, I mean, plenty of people like romance or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's just whatever you're passionate about is cool. I mean, as far as like what drew me to it, I don't know. I always like monsters, you know, so big Godzilla fan and stuff like that. And I never really had the experience of like my teachers calling home, worrying about me. I don't believe. My mom's actually in the audience. Hi, Mom. Hi, Mom.
Your son's a very talented young man.
So she's just sitting there, make good choices. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I didn't have any pushback growing up. We watched horror movies all the time. You know, I definitely think an early one was Alien for me. I think Alien showed me that horror can be mixed with anything, and it wasn't as much of a genre as a sensibility. Like it's just anything. You can have a horror comedy, you can have a horror western, you can have a horror in space. You can have, you know, it's just like you can have a romance in anywhere, but if it's done well, it just, I don't know, there is something about Alien, like I go back to, you know, it's just, I don't think I'll ever write anything like it. I don't think I really want to, but it is just like untouchable for me, you know. So, I mean, there are certain things like that, you know, whatever struck a chord first, you know, is what you hold dear, but yeah, I don't know. I definitely think that about the not being a full genre thing, though. It's weird because any situation, no matter where, what, where, when, it can be horrifying, can be scary, and I think that's really just super interesting. I love it. It's spicy. It's a little spicy.
Yeah, you just put in a little other thing.
Yeah.
A little spice.
Yeah. It's the we go scorpion. What's it? The scorpion. Yeah.
Ghost pepper.
Wait, you're talking about ghost peppers and
No, but what's the scorpion one? There's like
there's this. It's God. Anybody know? Bonus points.
Does anybody know the word on the light shop?
Yeah, can we just
Let's just say that it's horror with a 16,000 Scoville rating. Let's call it that.
I think you said it. Yes, that's
Thank you.
Derek.
Moving on.
My hell is being in a room, being forced to draw a bowl of fruit for all eternity.
It's gonna be a real detailed.
I can't. Ever. So, when I was in school, that was the kind of things that they would have us do for assignments. Like, I was the guy that notes were sent home and all that kind of stuff. We'll get into it in a minute. But literally, like, we'd come into class and they'd be a stupid friggin' bowl of fruit, you know, in the middle of the room, and the kids would have to sit in a circle and draw it. And so I had, all right, can I just talk to you? I had this teacher, her name was Patty Welsh. I'll never forget her name because she was an art teacher. She was really, really uppity, and she wanted to go by the book. If I tell you to draw this, I want you to draw this. Or if I want you to paint that, I want you to paint that. And I don't want you to be creative, and I don't want you to do an interpretation. I want you to do what I told you to do. Right? So I would do the exact opposite. Alright, so when I would draw a bowl of fruit, I would draw like an alien coming out of it, you know, or something like that, coming out of a pineapple. Or I remember one time there was a big rusted radio flyer in the middle of the room and they wanted us to draw that, so I made it in like a 12-car pileup with my friend's body on top of it. And, you know, if it was, you know, I don't know, whatever the thing was, I'd always flip it on its head. But the thing was, it wasn't because I was doing it because I wanted to do that. I wanted to bust her ass doing it. I wanted to see the look on her face when everybody turned in their assignments and they go from one page to the next page to the next page to Derek, oh, you son of a... So she would send notes home to my mother saying, I think Derek needs professional help. And she really did. I remember saying that. And I remember putting it on her desk and saying, Patty, not Patty, yeah, Patty, what's the meaning of this?
Also, it's most effective when it's really good.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
When you fuck with a teacher, you gotta do a really good job.
I told you before, if you date it, it's still an A. You better give me an A. You know, it looks like a radio flyer, there's just a body on top of it. You know?
Look at the chiaroscuro shading on that alien.
It comes down to what we talked about before, and it's not about being a punk, it's about being yourself. And you know, I don't do horror for you guys. Honest to God, I do it for me. I do it for me because I want you guys, I want to see that face again that I saw on Patty's face. You know? I can't wait for you guys to pick up a book and start looking through it and go, oh. We publish a book called Gore Shriek, which is a licensed comic from the 1980s, and specifically there's, in our volume 1 book, there's a story called Exordium, and in the story, here we go kids, in Exordium, It's about a girl and her sister on their way to a hospital. The girl in the passenger side seat is very pregnant. She's about to give birth, and the sister is driving her to the hospital. And on the way, they start seeing flashes of light everywhere. They start seeing it in windows. They start seeing it in the sky, and all of a sudden, they start seeing it in their own car. And this big flash of light happens, and instantly, the woman who's pregnant, who's about to give birth, is not pregnant anymore. And they get to the hospital. What just happened? You know, her stomach is still like flaccid from where a baby would be, but there's no baby there. And all of a sudden in the sky, everybody looks up in the sky, and there's 1 million babies up in the sky. And instantly something happens, and they all fall to earth. Now, it's easy. We even joked about what the story really should have been called. It was called Exordium, but we call it Baby Shower. And it's easy to pass it off as like an exploitation thing, right? It's like, oh, it's, you know, we came up with this great story about babies falling from the sky, but honest to God, like if you read it in the context that it's written, it's really about the end of days. It's about challenging our faith in what we've always believed up to this point. When you think about it, right? If there's no more children, then there's no more us, right? Then we grow, we die, and then that's it. So it's about our own mortality. It's about how small in the world that we really are. It's easy to pass something like that off. It's so easy to pass off babies falling from the sky as exploitation. But we didn't write it that way. So we were audacious. You know, we challenged the reader to look past the gore and the viscera of the moment and see the story for what it really is. So yeah, I don't do horror for you guys. I do it to see the look on your face. That's all.
And baby showers, right?
Wait till you see the next issue. Everybody has a little bit of darkness in them, right? And amongst creative people, there's not all of them, but there are a large group of creative people that have a little more darkness than others. So as a kid, all of my darkness was expressed through art. And looking back, I'm really glad that I enjoyed drawing and that I could draw, because that's how I got it all out, right? I mean, it made me normal. I was normal, I was leveled out because I had an outlet. And if I didn't have an outlet, I don't know who I'd be. And so yeah, I got sent home from school. I had all my friends be like, my mom said I can't hang out with you anymore because she saw the drawing you did in my yearbook. That end of the year was busy for me. I just had stacks of yearbooks because I told everybody I would do a drawing in the yearbook, but the one rule is I do whatever I want. No requests. I'm gonna draw whatever I want. So it was always something gross. Going to horror was natural because eventually all that darkness, you kind of get used to it, and you start to enjoy it. You're not afraid of it anymore, and you're like, I can have fun in this darkness. I can turn this into something that actually makes me happy. And that's, so many people can't do that, and that's why they go through such horrible depressions, and that's why their lives aren't what they want them to be, because they don't know how to turn that darkness into something that makes them happy. So horror has been a blessing to people like us. And now as a publisher, I get to oversee all these really cool creative teams, and I get to find that darkness in other people sometimes who haven't expressed it properly before. And my favorite example of this is we have a horror title that's extremely graphic, and it's written by our ballsiest writer who does just obscene horror. And the writer's name is David Hayes. So we got this artist who never worked in comics before. He did landscapes, right? He was a landscape artist, gallery work, gorgeous. He was a master of lighting and reflective colors, very Thomas Kincaid, right? And then his day job is he designs headstones for cemeteries, right? Interesting dude. We're like, what would this be like? What would you be like if you were doing horror comics, and we're talking like really gross horror, like those beautiful sunsets you can do? What if that's bouncing off the pile of guts that have been pulled out of this person? What if this person's head is being split apart? You can get those beautiful textures and shading and all this wonderful things on the brains. You really make that texture look wet. It's amazing. And, that dude's a monster. He is. His horror work is so gross and so awesome, and he'd never really done it before. He wasn't even a horror fan, And now it's like he just found this part of himself that he didn't know he had, and he expresses it every day. I mean, it's anybody who knows what social media is probably questioning what his his family and friends think of him now, because he used to be such an upstanding Christian in this community. Yeah, we created a beast, but he's having fun, and that's the goal, right? We're all having fun. Yeah, I mean, take that darkness, turn it into fun, and you can go really far with it. And not everybody's gonna like you for it though. I love you.
Take that darkness and turn it into fun. And dollar signs. Hopefully.
All right, this is the part of the program where we're going to ask if anybody has any questions for our tremendous panel up here. Could be about anything at this time, so feel free to come on up and ask. We'll hand you a mic if we can.
Actually, going back to what Derek said about the teacher and the reaction, what's the most memorable reaction you've had to your work? Like, if you can pick one thing, or maybe just a couple, negatively or positively. I mean, negatively sounds like it'd be more entertaining, but either way works.
First time my wife read my script, she called me an asshole.
I like that you are.
Because the way this all started, the part that I forgot is that prom night plus a drink where your wife leaves you and you kill her in a dream. Sorry, babe.
No, I was just confused.
She was confused and called me an asshole over it, but that was the best reaction I've ever gotten.
Are we going down the line?
I guess so. With me, my worst reaction is that my high school portfolio teacher said, "Well, you can always have art as a hobby." So I said,
The guy obviously didn't know shit about art.
and I said, "Screw that." And now I'm a teacher, and I would never send a note home about work that said you should seek professional help for this child, because we all have our darknesses. It's there. My kids see my work while I'm working on it too. So
I'm working through it. I'm getting better.
I mean, it depends on the medium, right? If your medium is the cat, then yeah.
It's like, someone talk.
I got a quick memory. So, the most memorable reaction I've ever heard. I wrote a book called Adoration for the Dead in 2005. It's a collection of short horror stories. And I let loose on a couple. I was trying to be like, some of them are, respectable, and some of them are just outrageous. And I had a girl come up to me at a convention, and she threw the book at my face. And she said, "I threw up." She said, "I was reading the middle of the story, and this part got so graphic and so gross and described it to a point where it made me physically ill. I had just eaten, and I threw up all over this book, and now you're gonna wear it." Because she'd just thrown the puke-covered book, whatever at me. And I was like, "Did you finish it though?" The story. And honestly, I was grinning ear to ear the rest of the convention. I was like, "That's the best compliment I've ever received." You even got to the point at which you threw up. I mean, you stuck through it to that point. I was thrilled. I was so excited. That's my most memorable reaction.
I remember what I was gonna say. So, I mean, in general, like, everybody wants to hear what's like the worst reaction. You asked the question, what's the craziest reaction? But I'm going to give you the absolute truest answer. All the reactions are positive. They're awesome. We draw what we do, and we publish what we publish, and people have responded really well to it. So for me, it's seen the look on you guys' faces when you pick up a book, and I just got a text before I came up on this panel from some guy who bought a book from us yesterday, saying, "Dude, I love the hell out of Volume 1. I'm on Volume 2 now, man." That's what it's all about. Those are the kinds of things. I did a show in Parsippany, New Jersey a couple months back, and I had never done that market before, so it was a first for me, and I advertised it okay, but for the most part, I'm going there for the first time. It was a giant convention. I don't know if you guys know the chiller convention that happens in New Jersey, but it's a monolith of a convention. There's just guests galore. And this one kid, he drove all the way from, the Lower East Side, New York, all the way to New Jersey just to get one of the books that I was selling, and then left, and then went all the way back to New York. And he was so damn excited to be there. He's like, dude, I've been waiting for so long to get this book. I can't believe that it's here, and I got it, and whatever. We took pictures together, and we were both laughing and having a good time. When he left, I didn't care if somebody came in after that and put a cherry bomb in my ass and blew it up. I was happy as hell for the rest of that weekend. Huh? I look like that?
No, you might like that.
Oh, I might like that. No, you might like that, kid. I know where the body's buried. But seriously, it's the opposite effect. It's the happiness that this stuff brings and the excitement. It makes other people want to get up and do it, and I think that's the funnest part about it all.
I went to a summer camp when I was a kid it was called College for Kids, and they had a cartooning program where there was a man called Bill Graining, the probably best art teacher I will ever have in my entire life. He encouraged me with everything. We were just, mimicking, drawing cartoons all day, but he saw how much I drew, and he took me aside and he showed me, like, why don't you do this, why don't you do that, and it was very encouraging. I'll never forget his teachings that he gave me. And he was the first person. I was like a kid, but he still like said, hey, I had an extra one for you, but like, don't like tell anyone about this. Like, let's not make it weird about this. And he gave me an anatomy book about to look at. It's full of naked women and pictures and all that. He doesn't want to make it like, it's like, hey, check this out. Like, he didn't give me a hustler to learn anatomy or anything. But my dad had one of those. And a lot of heavy metal magazines. I'm really into weird stuff. But
You're
still,
weird.
yeah. But he gave me such an impact of like, keep going. Like, you got something. He took me aside from everything else to the point where there was even a teacher that wanted to cancel at one point because I kept coming every year and he was like, you want to teach the class? And it was great for a bit. And I still have a little bit of an imposter syndrome completely because right before I came to this panel, someone I knew came up to me and told me that my artwork inspired him and he actually started to tear up. And I still don't know how to take that.
All right, I'd like to thank everybody for attending. We're going to have to cut this thing now at this moment. I would like to thank Saturday Night Comics for joining us. Where can I find you guys?
I'm on Instagram at Billy Nichols brand at Saturday Night Comics.
I'm at booth 314 right now out in the show floor.
Go find them.
And Rough House Publishing as well. Where can they find you as well?
You can find us at roughhousepublishing.com. We're also on Twitter at RHP Comics. You can find me on social media, Steve on social media. Again, roughhousepublishing.com. We're here at the con and we're selling all our new books and old books alike. So come by and see us and let us make you happy. Like we were talking about earlier. So.
And lastly, Source Point Press. Where can we find it? Guys, where can they find you?
Thanks. So sourcepointpress.com. On Twitter, it's sourceptpress, because they're afraid of too many letters in the word. And SourcePoint Press everywhere else, Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff. And I primarily dedicate everything to that. So if you find that, you might find me somewhere in the mix. But mostly you'll get to see our merry cast of characters that we employ now. It's insane. So thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.